let's get started then. It's our great pleasure this evening to have Jane Coffey. Did I say your name correctly, Jane?
It's Coffey.
Coffey, okay. Oh, it's a nice way.
43 beans.
Yeah. And Jane, of course, was co-principal at the Montessori School in Kingsley in Western Australia for 17 years. Quite a record. But let's start by, can you go back to the beginning and tell us your Montessori story? How did you discover Montessori?
Well, when my husband was doing a teaching degree when we first married, and he was reading a lot of very interesting books. Well, we were then reading them and discussing them. So I guess Ivan Illich and Summerhill, those sort of books about education, and we were discussing them. And when our son was born, I guess reading about reading the continuum concept and books about parenting, discovering Montessori through reading, really, wanting something different for our son was the motivation. And then my husband saw an advertisement in the newspaper for a Montessori training course, and it seemed extraordinary. So he went and met Mrs. Dyker, and we were living an hour away from the school at that time. And so he'd come home very late at night, full of excitement every week. And he was just totally blown away by it, by Mrs. Dyker, who was running the course, and absolutely convinced that that's what we had to do with our son. And I said, well, yeah, fine, but maybe not at 3 when he's 6. But in any case, he started when he was 3. And I did the course and was offered a position there after that. So yeah, that's where it started. And I guess it just didn't stop. You just, I think every day you understood that you were doing the right thing and that Montessori was correct. So it was, yeah, very affirming working there. Although it was, yeah, it's always a challenge, teaching and Montessori teaching, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
you were saying earlier that when we were chatting that a lot of your Montessori journey was about Mrs. Dyker's. She, of course, is a bit of a legend in the Australian Montessori community. For those who don't know her, can you tell us a little bit about her?
Look, she was an amazingly energetic person, mentally and physically, totally focused on Montessori and the children. She was an absolutely dynamic personality. She's very strong-minded and strong-willed, but very positive as well. I know she was difficult, and because of that strength at times, and it's unfortunate, but she was really a very loving, kind, and inspiring person, and I owe her so much. I think the school is just amazing because of her and her legacy. She's yeah, yeah, anyway, she was amazing. I think it was a real privilege to have met her and to have worked with her. Yeah, I'll treasure that always.
Yeah. Do you think that that's somewhat of a requirement in Montessori, to be both loving and kind, but also strong and opinionated?
Yes.
Seems to be a trait
Yeah.
among many Montessorians, including Dr. Maria, of course, herself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think so. Yes, yes. You do have to be very strong, and you do have to be kind and loving. I mean, Mrs. Dyker had an amazing sense of humour as well, yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting sidetracked. So yes, I do think you need that strength and fundamental goodwill to others to do it. Mrs. Dyker came from a very political orientation, and I think she she railed against having to be an independent school. She felt that Montessori education should be a free choice, and although we couldn't do that, she always was trying to keep the fees as low as possible, which was very worthy. But when you'd finished a day of work and you had to turn around and do all the cleaning of the toilets and the yards and the, you know, everything, it was a bit hard. But yeah, generally that was a very worthy goal of hers, to make Montessori education available to as many who as wanted it. Basically, that cost wouldn't be an issue in the choice, essentially.
Now, she, of course, retired as principal of the school in 1998, that's when you stepped up, I believe, with Bobby.
Yes.
To lead the school. Tell us more about that. How was that?
Well, I guess we were prepared for it. Mrs. Dyker was more beginning to focus more attention on training, both in Perth and in the eastern states, and she we set up, or the council of the school set up a subcommittee of older staff, people who'd been there a long time, which included Judith Lynn Robinson, who was the deputy principal at the time, Lorraine Frost, Bobby Beasley and myself, and the four of us formed this subcommittee, and we went to participated in different like interviews for children and staff. We also set about writing policy, codifying all the procedures of the school. And we did that in Lorraine Frost's house on Saturdays. We'd spend a few hours each weekend, and we gradually codified all the policies and procedures of the school, which until then had all been in Mrs. Dyker's head, to the extent that they existed. So that was a really valuable process for all of us. It was a learning curve, but it was also, you know, trying to put into structure Mrs. Dyker's attitudes and beliefs, basically, so that policy was reflective of of her.
Mm.
So, and then through that process, Bobby and I were appointed. I don't think I don't know that anyone thought it would survive as long as it did, because we were very different people. However, we were very committed to the school and very committed to continuing Mrs. Dyker's legacy. And we were able to work very hard. And yeah, so for 17 years, we I think it was actually closer to 18, but anyway, it was a very successful partnership, and I think we've become very close friends over that period, and I think it was a really good model for our school. In fact, I know we've often said, you know, I don't know why more schools don't do it, because it means that you've got two people sort of making decisions and, you know, talking things over. It gives you the opportunity to be very considered in your approach, because you're having to talk to each other first and sort of sort out what angle you're going to take and how you're going to respond to particular situations. So it was very good for the school, I think, to have two people from different ends of the school.
It must be a very lonely job being a principal. I know that the burnout rate is quite high for principals, and the average tenure of a principal is quite short. I can't remember the exact 6 or 7 years or less, I think. I can't remember, but it's yeah, it sounds like it probably was a factor in your long tenure at the school, being able to share that responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you said you had to find people who were well matched to work in that situation, I think you'd be wrong, because nobody would have said Bobby and I were well matched, except in our intent to manage the school and our commitment to Montessori and the school. And that personality-wise, we're quite different, but it worked because, and I mean, we were both teaching at the same time, so it was part-time.
Wow.
We thought it would be great to have a full-time principal who was just being principal, but in actual fact, I think the better thing is to have two people in the position. So you've always got that cover as well if you, yeah.
What levels did you both teach?
I taught in early childhood in the or what we call the pre-primary, the 3 to 6s mostly. I did also work in the lower primary, but I kept getting pulled back to the pre-primary, and I absolutely loved it. Bobby was in the secondary, and also was the coordinator for the International Baccalaureate. So she had quite a, she really had 3 roles in teaching at secondary level, IB coordinator and co-principal. So, you know, it was hard work.
And that, of course, is one of the highlights of that school, is that it was the first school in Australia to go all the way to high school, to have an IB program. Yeah.
Well, I think we were the first Montessori, well, I think we were the first Montessori school in the world to have the IB program as well. But I think it is, there are now quite a few, but we found that, and I have to say, when we first took on the IB, I was not in favour of it. I felt it was an elitist sort of course. However, in the process of learning about it, I became utterly convinced that, yeah, it was uniquely compatible with Montessori. Yeah, we have found that. Yeah, over the years, it's been marvellous for the school, and yeah, a very good qualification for the students.
Are there aspects of it that make it challenging for some Montessori schools to adopt?
Well, the cost. Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredibly expensive. Trying to get staff that are IB qualified and willing to work just a few hours, you know, because the classes are very small. It's a continuing problem, yeah, I mean, I'm long out of it now, but it was always a financial, you know, heavy weight for the school, and the commitment was made right from the start when we joined that the cost of the International Baccalaureate would not be borne only by just by those students, that the cost would be spread over the whole school. So a measure of everyone's fees made the cost. So yeah, but still, it's very hard, or still very hard to manage, I think maybe anyone would say.
What are some of your favorite highlights from your time at the school that come to mind?
Well, I was thinking about this, and it was, in a way, it's sort of highlights, I guess, are it was, in one sense, it was all a highlight, because it's a very satisfying place to work, and as I said before, you were always every day confirmed that Montessori was right for the children, and that, so it was, I mean, it's a very peaceful, happy place, you know. It was all a highlight in one sense, but yeah, there were some moments that were more amusing than others, I suppose. I remember Mrs. Dyker was always very keen for any work that had to be done in the school, that the students would do it, and so they were always involved in physical work where it was possible, and once moved a garden shed from one end of the property, oh, well, not the property, but one end of the playing field to the other. They all got inside and got a grip and walked it across the field. So all you saw was this shed moving and all these little feet underneath carrying it along. So another time I remember her, Mrs. Dyker, on the roof of the school with Judith, and they were cleaning the roof, but it was a flat roof, which is why we eventually had to change the school, change the buildings. But they'd strapped big boards to their feet, and they were sort of skiing across the roof to clean the roof. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. But I guess the highlight really was the building of the new the planning and the actual building of the new classrooms. That was just an amazing process and very exciting. We were very lucky to be able to do it, and we have these beautiful buildings, which are rammed earth, and yeah, very well designed for the climate. And sorry, I'm still recovering from COVID. Yeah, so that would have been another highlight, the creation of those what ended up being 3 new buildings, primary, secondary, and another pre-primary. Yeah.
What do you think was the key to making it such a peaceful and happy place?
Well, I think the positive Montessori environment, it's just, I think I could also say the number of trees around the place, but basically the classrooms are very, very calm and yeah, happy places, because the children were satisfied. Actually, Mrs. Dyker used to say that all our children were beautiful, and I thought she's very biased, but you know, I think when children are relaxed and at ease, and they're not having to compete for attention or care, or, you know, to perform, I think they relax and their faces relax and they actually do become beautiful. So I agree with her. But yeah, but I think that focus on creating an environment that was calm and peaceful, yeah, is that Montessori environment is yeah, the key, basically. The children respond to it and they create it themselves. Yeah.
What have been some of your most notable challenges in your life as a Montessori educator?
I think at the beginning, if I think back to that time, being conscious that you're working against your own history and experience as a student, and you're having to be conscious that you're not falling into old patterns, and also being very conscious that you have to be trying to get it right all the time. I remember, do I hold the golden beads this way or, that way, I mean, these were kind of at the beginning big issues. And after a while, you realize that it's not so much. I mean, the lessons have to be done very precisely, I know, but it's the actual essence of the lesson rather than whether you hold it at this end or that end or whatever, and that you become more confident of the intent of the lesson and the response of the child, I suppose. You become more confident of.
Are you talking about transformation of the adult?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Have you discovered any keys to that in your time as a Montessorian?
No, although I would say Mrs. Dyker always, she counselled parents and teachers in the same way to observe themselves and to be very aware of, to sort of act as if you were looking at yourself from above, and just trying to learn through observation of the child and of yourself, basically. And I think that is key to it. You are intensely aware of yourself as a Montessori teacher, I think, in trying to you know, a child is looking to you for assistance or input from in some way. Yeah, I think that was the key, being able to observe yourself and to just, yeah, unfortunately be more focused on how you were acting, and that I always found, in the Montessori classroom, there was always something new. There was always something different. It's a very varied environment, and the children always throw you a curveball in the way they respond to something, or don't respond to something. Yeah, you always feel as if you're always learning, and you always feel as if you're never getting it right. But yeah.
How did Mrs. Dykers address transformation of the teacher in her training programs?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I think she, I mean, she did work a lot on the preparation of the teacher, in the sense of she taught us how to observe, and we had a lot of time observing seagulls and birds long before we were allowed to observe children in the training course. But her support, once you were teaching, she was there quite often in the classroom, and you learnt a lot by watching her. And as she was a strong person, she didn't hold back if you were not doing something correctly or could do something better. She would always tell you, and she was always right. I remember one really big lesson I had early in the piece was, she came in and she was observing after lunch, and I said, it's so scatty after lunch. It's difficult to bring it all back to steady work. And she said, well, look at the kitchen. And of course the lunch washing up dishes were still there, and it was all a bit messy, I suppose. And she said, just clean that up, focus on the environment, and it'll all come, everything will calm down. And it did. So, I guess by example, she taught as well. But she knew what would work, basically. They were very valuable, always very valuable lessons that you had from her. And not only her, of course. I also remember when Bobby was in doing relief in my classroom when I was on service leave, I think, and a child used the scissors to cut the top off of a muesli bar, and then he just put the leftover piece of the wrapper into the scissor tray. And Bobby said to him, is that what you do with that? And he said, yeah, we put it there, and then Jane comes along later and picks it up and puts it in the bin. And I hadn't realised that I'd done that, but obviously I had been doing it often enough for them to think that was, or for someone to think that's how it happened, So yeah, you learn all the time about yourself from different sources.
They're mirrors, aren't they, children?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm sure everyone's got those sort of stories to tell.
Absolutely. Yeah. What advice would you have for new or inexperienced principals on the job after your long tenure as principal?
Well, I don't know. Like many principals, we came to it from teaching, not training in leadership or management. And when we started the Association of Independent Schools, we joined that organisation, and they were a huge support and guidance for us, and I presume continue to be so. They had a forum, I think, every term, called the small independent school principals group, basically. And so you could meet with other principals of small schools and talk with them and address particular issues that were of problem at the time. And that was really very valuable, a very good forum. People were very generous with their time and their thoughts. Yeah, so I know, I presume that is still available. So I would say use whatever support is available in that sense. The other, I mean, Bobby and I, because we were working together, we had that, as I said, that support of each other. But we were also very kind of grounded because we were teaching at the same time. So we approached the principalship in the same way, I think, as trying to create an environment that, you know, trying to create a Montessori environment. But it was very, I think it was easier to maintain collegial and respectful and supportive relationships with staff because we were also one of them, if you know what I mean.
A theme that I've hearing in what you're saying is to reach out and not try and do it alone.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I mean, you do. Ultimately, you're the one where the buck stops, but you do need to take people along with you. That you all have to be part of the same thing. Well, for it to be most effective, I think. The other thing that I think I learnt was there should be a process of continuing kind of review in the schools. I don't mean like self-improvement programs, but a continued review among staff of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and sort of so that you're all kind of working through the same sort of issues. How do we make this as Montessori as possible? Yeah, a bit like you do as a parent, really. You know, when you know, how do we approach this issue? You talk it over with each other, and then, yep, okay, we've got this. but I think as a school, you need to keep doing that.
It's easy to start taking things for granted, isn't it? And kind of go to sleep and not notice things like picking up a wrapper from a muesli bar. And, you know, we all do those kinds of things where we just don't notice them anymore. But I guess what you're saying is self-reflection is really important to keep on your toes.
But both as an individual and as a school.
Now you a bit earlier you talked about coming in on Saturdays to codify what was in Mrs. Dyker's mind. Did you figure out how to manage that work-life balance? I know that's a struggle for many Montessorians, is, you know, not working on weekends and keeping that boundary between work life and the home life.
I don't say it was always on my mind, the classroom. I don't think I achieved a separation, nor really wanted to. I mean, I suppose I'm blessed. I had a very supportive and very busy husband and son. I was always, it was just what you did. Teaching is a very heavy workload, but I think I wouldn't be alone in saying that the children stay with you. And I think if you have them for 3 years, as we do in a Montessori environment, they're part of your life.
Are you still in touch with previous students?
Through events and so on. And current, there's quite a few current staff that are past students. I guess. I mean, I'm still now. If we go somewhere or see something new, I think, oh gosh, you could do that. You know, that would be good for the classroom. It doesn't stop. You know, if you're engaged with it. I mean, I'm still buy books for the classroom because I think they should have that. I can't stop myself. But it's always with you, I think. And it never felt like a burden or something that I had to escape from, if you know what I mean, or create a division from.
What do you see as the biggest challenges faced by Montessori in Australia?
Well, I think look, I don't want to get involved in the politics, but I think when we had a strong national body in the Montessori Australia Foundation, I think that was very good for Montessori. It was a sort of professional body that had status and attention, and I think that we probably need that as the Montessori community probably needs that strong body, you know, or a strong national body that is a professional organisation. The work that was done on the quality assurance program and the national Montessori curriculum was incredibly valuable, brought everybody together, or, you know, a heck of a lot of people together. I think it would be good to have a body like that again, if we could. Challenges to Montessori, it is really hard because the norm is the factory model. It's incredibly overwhelming. Most people don't see or want an alternative to what they had. So yeah, it's hard, but I think we can only keep chipping away at trying to say, this is what Montessori is, this is what we do, come and look and see. You know, I think most people who see a classroom of very young children all operating independently, working and active harmoniously, surely think, wow, this is amazing. It's very different and achieved without somebody directing it in the in that sense, although of course they are. Yeah, it's creating a beautiful environment in which children can be positive is not valued by a lot of people, unfortunately. And I think taking in Montessori, I don't know, it's not whiz bang, it's not bells and whistles, it's very quiet, considered study to understand what you're seeing and what's happening, and what is possible. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not a mainstream course choice.
Do you think we can change that? What do you think we need to do? I mean, I know when you're in a large successful school like Kingsley, it's easy to think that, you know, that Montessori is everywhere and that in reality, you know, Montessori only serves 0.5% of school is only 0.5% of schools in Australia and serves, you know, 0.012% of children. How can we change this situation that's been this way for so long in this country?
Well, yeah, it would be very easy to get discouraged, but I think you can only well, there's two things you can do. You can focus on doing your own school really, really well and being as loud about it as you can. I think another way that I think is important, but also very challenging, is continued research and trying to show through research what we're doing, and that means measuring things in a different way, and being quite innovative and proactive in joining other organisations, educational organisations, to undertake research and be part of trying to show that Montessori is a successful way of educating children.
There is definitely a deficit of research about Montessori in Australia, for sure.
And it's really hard because, I mean, it's very busy in the classroom, full stop. Yeah. Not like every other teacher in Australia. Montessori teachers have the same administrative, compliance issues that burden teachers everywhere. And so adding research to it is it's difficult, but I think that is the is the way to go.
Do you think that research would capture the imagination of the public, though? Like, I sometimes wonder if maybe what we need is a big blockbuster Hollywood movie about Maria's life starring Meryl Streep or someone like that, you know, that, you know, the general public can watch and just be inspired about her life. Because I think what people want is a good story more than perhaps research. I mean, academics and politicians definitely need research, but to inspire more parents, more families to look for Montessori, do we need a new marketing model that's sort of more updated, rather than we tend to keep associating ourselves with this elderly Italian woman who died 70 years ago, and maybe that says obsolete, and what we need to do rather is to sort of say this is a cutting edge educational technology that is backed up by current research, rather than something that, you know, is 100 years old. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Maybe a blockbuster movie with Meryl Streep is the way, but I don't think that the general public are open to Montessori, and we will never have the bells and whistles that we need to get the attention of those people. What you're looking to do is to show people who are interested in education and who are passionate about the mental health of our children, that there is another way. And you just have to, this is my opinion, you just have to chip away at that. I know research won't do it, because there's a wonderful book that Angeline Lillard wrote on the science behind Montessori, the science behind the genius. And she showed how all the research, or not all the research, but so much research supports what Montessori is doing, from, you know, on attention and on positive discipline and so a non-competitive environment and rewards and punishment, all of those things. And the research overwhelmingly supports what Montessori is doing. But, you know, who reads that book? I mean, the educators themselves, I mean, rewards and punishments are still a big part of the education model that is not Montessori, or Steiner, sorry, I should say. So that's been going a hell of a lot longer than 70 years, if you know what I mean. So I mean, it's I don't believe that Montessori is stale. I believe that it is still showing the way to educate our children in the most positive way and effective way.
I meant the public image of Montessori rather than the substance of Montessori. Do you think that we need to focus more on Montessori in public education, as Mrs. Dykers was focused?
Yeah, although I think if you're, I'd be very keen to know how it works in the United States, where they have a lot of public Montessori programs, but it seems to work there. But I think I don't know, you'd have to have some way of people selecting into it, because the way I understand Montessori, if you have, you need to have a compatible environment at home. You can't have a different system at home and Montessori at school. So parents have to buy in really to a Montessori education. And Mrs. Dyker was I mean, that was one part of her legacy was that, you know, educating parents so that they understood what they were getting into, and from our point of view, so that they always understood that we were working together with the parents.
What was her parent education program like?
Very long lectures. Yeah. I mean, well, we couldn't do that in the same way, but we did. I mean, that's essentially is with the enrolment process, trying to make sure that people had observed and attended parents' nights and had as much opportunity as they could to learn about what the school was about, and that they had a compatible background at home. We continued that. How it would work if you were had a Montessori section of the school, of a public school, I'm just not sure how it would work unless the people self-selected into it, or the parents self-selected into it, and whether you know, you would be able to have the same sort of mixed age groupings, and yeah. Anyway, look, whatever gets Montessori out there, I suppose, is good, but not changing Montessori, not watering it down. I think that's kind of classic model has to be maintained. Yeah.
I want to open it up to people who have joined in the audience who might want to ask you questions. Does anybody have something they would like to ask Jane?
Can I ask? I've got two of the three main things that you were sharing. So I've got focus on doing school as well as you can. So do that well and do it loudly, get the word out there. Continued research. And I missed what your third thought was.
Oh my God. So have I.
So I come back to it then. But I was curious what your third idea was.
Yeah, I'm not even conscious that I had a third idea on that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to see if there's any other clue that I saw there that I wrote down.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that yeah.
It may have been one of the ones you've already said. So it may have been, the third one could have been, it's not done with bells and whistles, just keep it as it is. I wonder whether that was the third one, or don't water it down.
Oh yeah.
Or educate parents. So maybe all of those were part three.
I think it's very important to be strong about what you are, and keep that focus, and as I said, do it loudly. I think perhaps working with other educational organisations and with research is probably a good idea, but yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I just felt like I was building it up to number three.
Sorry. Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question for Jane?
I do, Mark. My question, Jane's around your tracking of the alumni, because that over 40 years there would be quite a few, and I know you've just had a celebration, so I'm just interested in when that started to happen and how it started to happen. Because they're also very valuable for our research.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always been a problem to keep contact with the alumni, and I mean, at the moment we have a lot of parents who are past students. When I say the school has a lot of parents who are past students, and board members who are past students, and staff who are past students, and they have connections, and there is a lot of the alumni, a lot of the IB alumni are connected. They're just not really, I mean, they'll come to whatever they're asked to come, but we feel we don't have enough numbers. There's a lot more people out there who are not still on our lists, or we don't have contact lists, or but I know it's been we've observed the need to set up an alumni sort of association, a more formal one, but yes, I think they're still working on it to do that. But
yeah, it's quite an undertaking.
Yeah,
I think.
Yes, well, even yes, well, my own son until recently had connections with one of his friends from school, but they all have these lives and then move states, and go and do interesting things all over the world. So but it would be nice to have knowledge of them. Knowledge of it.
Jane, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for your time this evening and sharing your wisdom and experience with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been nice.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. In a couple of weeks, on September 19th, we'll have William Mayer, who's we're changing continents to an American again. I think one of the few Americans we've had on Montessori Lives. And William Mayer has been in Montessori for over 50 years. He's was living legacy for the American Montessori Society a couple of years ago. And we'll be talking to him on September 19th. So I hope to see you then.
I'm just going to jump in, Mark. Jane just sent a message about the name of the book, and I think that was Montessori, the Science Behind the Genius. Is that the one you meant, Jane?
Yes.
I put a grammatically incorrect version up in the chat.
Oh, you did too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was rushing before we stopped.
A great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, Jane.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.